there, how's it going? Drop in the comments. Can you hear and see me? I'm coming in through Facebook Direct because it totally changed with Zoom. And right now you can only post to your profile and not a group. So, whatever. Here I am to talk about this spectrum of mobility, strength, and tightness in your body. So, if you imagine a scale, right? On one side of the scale, you have really, really flexible or really, really mobile. There's terms from this, such as hypermobility syndrome. Many yogis feel hypermobile. Elostenios is another term for this or diagnosis. On the other side of the spectrum, you might have bound down or stiff or tight, right? And with all this, you might feel weak, right? You can feel weak because you just have too much mobility and your strength can't keep up with all that motion in your body. You can also feel weak when you're really, really tight because literally your body can't move efficiently because you're so tight, it can't fight against its own tightness, so to speak. So that can really limit yourself. So ideally, if we have this spectrum of a lot of movement, not as much movement, or very little movement, let's say, you want to be somewhere ideally in the middle, right? Where you have good mobility so you can do the things in life like reach up onto a closet shelf or something like that with the strength and mobility to do it efficiently and not put yourself at risk for injury or just not even be able to do it in the first place, right? So most of us subconsciously know this. The tight people want to get more flexible. The flexible people actually usually like their flexibility and want to get more of it, but that's a whole other story. But some of us flexible people have realized, I need some strength. And so we want to find the middle ground. Now, what's not often thought about is how this impacts how you show up in life or how you show up in life impacts unconsciously what's going on in the body, right? It really comes down to a bit of beliefs and patternings and somewhat genetics. And it's not just genetics of you, it's DNA and genetics of maybe your lineage or your culture. So, for example, more females are more mobile, and this is a very general sense, than males, right? And females often have this tendency of people pleasing. And so, right, literally, I'm very, very hypermobile, and I used to. There's even work on this in the nervous system and the stress response, and there's a term called fawn. So I very much used to slip into a fawn state where I'd be a chameleon or people please and literally allow my body, myself. I didn't have clear boundaries, didn't really have this inner strength to say no, maybe. So I was pulled in all sorts of different directions, right? And I go into deeper in this in the podcast. So I'll drop the episode in the links after this, or if someone has it wants to drop it in for me, let me know. Let me know if you can relate to any of this. Just starting off right off the bat, if you're like, whoa, I never considered it. I never considered like my mobility and how I show up. Whereas okay, so that's one side of the spectrum, again, the hypermobile person. And then we have the tight person who might live a more rigid style life, right? And maybe, and again, in a general sense, they might be more stubborn and kind of set in their ways and don't flow as easily. So ideally, we want to meet in the middle in both our strength and mobility physically, but also energetically, where you're able to stay strong to the authentic needs of you, your dreams, your desires, and have the ability to flow with life, right? So you're not missing opportunities or being closed off or closed minded, all that sort of things. And that really is what I work a lot of people with. And they don't realize it because they'll show up into my office or online, and it presents as different problems. It presents as pain in the body. It presents as feeling weak again or tight. It presents as not meeting their goals or their dreams, desires. It can also present as feeling stressed out and overwhelmed, confused. Um, so it can present in a lot of more superficial ways. But the point of this today is to create an awareness. And that's the whole reason why I named my mastermind Awaken. Because the first step to making any change is to create awareness or awaken yourself to what's really going on superficially, right? So for me, as you know, my work has been doing a lot of healing. For better or worse, my hysterectomy kind of opened a Pandora's box, but I had started a lot of this healing work prior to my hysterectomy. But if you think about it, the area that I had the surgery on is the root chakra, right? The basic fundamental needs of safety and support and roof over your head and that sort of thing. And for me, a lot of my work has really been with the nervous system and teaching my body, my unconscious mind, that I am safe, that I am sufficient, and strengthening myself in a way that allows me to still flow, because I love being a yogi. I love having mobility in my body, but having the ability to have the strength to safely support my joints and in my body, and um, knowing that I don't have to over grip to find that support. Because a lot of times, and some people relate to this, like they might grip their jaw when they're stressed, for example, or maybe their shoulders come up by their ears and then they feel funky in their neck, right? So stress can present in many different ways, or hypertension. It can even throw off your blood sugar, all these sorts of things. So here's an opportunity today is to really reflect. You can do some journaling on it. You can do a meditation. It can be very brief, but it also can be very profound. Is without judgment, without criticism, is what do you feel in your body? Where on this spectrum do you find yourself? Are you on more on the mobile side? And there's specific tests, right, that you can find out if you're hypermobile. You want to see a fun one is if you can take your thumb. So there's like in medicine, there's people, Western medicine is learning more about it. It was 5 tests before, and now I think there's more tests, but you can just draw your thumb to your forearm. See, I do this quite easily, like it's right up there, and I have no pain. It even looks kind of painful, but it's not, I promise you. Most people, like my husband, he can only get to like right here. He's more on the restricted side of things. So that's just one test, and like another one's like skin, which also relates to IBS, and IBS can very much relate to strength. So, IBS, when skin and your vessels actually can, if they're stretchy, they will expand. So, your colon will expand or your blood vessels will expand, but they don't have the same ability to contract because they don't have that same strength. So, for example, in my earlier 20s, I used to faint a lot because when I stand up too quickly or if I was standing up too long, my blood vessels really didn't have that same contractility to get blood to my noggin. I would go down. And I was diagnosed with IBS when I was a kid, when I was like 9 years old. And intuitively, and I was, there was some stress in my life when I was younger too. Intuitively, I knew it all went together. And this is what I talk about in my podcast, because I was named Gumby. My two nicknames were, when I was a kid, was Gummy, and I was just overly sensitive. So if you can relate to any of this, I would go listen to the podcast. If you're feeling tight and restricted, don't worry, I've got you. It's all about creating more flow in your life and trusting that so you can let go of the underlying gripping that's sometimes present. or just release some fascial restrictions, open your mind a bit. Wait, there's ways to work with both. But more importantly, you need to take a step back as the observer and say, okay, well, how might this be showing up in my business? Am I people pleasing and I don't have good boundaries in my business? So I'm working all sorts of days, or maybe I'm lowering my prices and giving people really smoking deal because I don't have the confidence to stand in my power. Or maybe it's presenting because I'm kind of closed off and I'm stubborn and I need to do it my way. Or maybe there's like a lack of trust of your employees, and then you feel like you have to do all the things, keep all the plates spinning. So then you get home and you're like so exhausted, and superficially you might think, well, the problem is with my marriage because I'm always fighting with my significant other at the end of the day. But really, what's happening is you're spending out so much energy throughout your day. You come home, you're irritable and you're tired. And of course, we don't communicate well in that phase. Like, we're easier to react and get triggered. So this is the opportunity to get deeper. The best way to go about it is one of two ways, as I always recommend, is get down in a restorative pose, just meditate on it and see what comes up. Pose a question to yourself and then just drop in. Let go of the attachment of finding the answer right now, but just drop into yourself and open the mind to the possibility of learning about your patterns, or journal it. And there's a few different journaling techniques. So if you want to get deeper into the tactics of the techniques, or tactics of what to do if you're like, oh my gosh, I that's totally me. I've got you. You can just sign up for a free strategy call. We'll go over what's going on in your life. I'll hear the patterns. As I mentioned in the podcast, that is one thing I'm really good with, is like I can communicate and sometimes get a sense of what's going on. And so I'll know exactly how to help you. And then we'll make a plan. We'll say, okay, like, what's the goal? What do you really want to in your life? Maybe it is less pain. Maybe it is more mobility or strength. Or maybe you have specific business tactics that you need to work on, or that that you want to do, or you should do, or you have been doing, but why aren't they working? So a lot of this stuff is going on behind the scenes of why it might not be working, or why you're not actually taking the action to try something new or do this tactic that could possibly really benefit you. And here's the reason why: so you can enjoy life, like right now. It's not so you have to wait until you hire the perfect employee, set yourself aside or health aside till car actually get that time because you have the right person there, or it so you learn all the specific tactics. Or just yesterday I heard, I need to launch my business in a year so then I can have my baby. It doesn't have to be so black and white, because you don't know in a year. If you wait a year to have a baby, who knows if you're going to get pregnant on the first go, right? Or are you going to scramble and hustle so much in that 1 year that you sabotage? Because she was saying, she's like, well, I'm not anywhere where I desire to be. Of course, because she doesn't feel sufficient. She doesn't believe in herself, and she's not enjoying life right now. Because, like, here's what's going to happen is she's going to hustle, 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 try to get her business to where it wants to be. And then she's going to hustle, hustle, hustle and try to have a baby. And then she's probably going to try to hustle, hustle, hustle to the next thing, right? At some point, we just got to put the brakes on and start enjoying life and doing the things, right? And that's personally what I've learned. Some of you know my story. Again, it's all in the podcast or on other social media posts. In fact, one of my most recent, so you can go check those out. All right. So today's homework: listen to the podcast, meditate, and journal on how physically and energetically there might be a connection. And maybe it's perfect for you. Maybe you're doing great. Nothing needs to be changed. That's awesome. It's just an awareness. or maybe something does, and then you can decide what is the next best step for you. And of course, I'm here for you. And I will see you next week. I've got a special guest on the podcast. Her name is Lauren. She specializes in EFT. So stay tuned for that, and try to get her in here. We are actually on May 12th doing a post Mother's Day workshop. It's Relax and Renew for moms. So if Mother's Day was stressful, instead of relaxing, we've got you. So it'll be a bit of meditation, yoga, and EFT techniques to calm the nervous system so you feel replenished and renew. And then I've got a special new workshop coming up in June. So stay tuned for all this. I'm super excited. And I can't wait to see you next week. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So leave me some comments. It's like love. That's like my love language. Commenting is my love language. Where have you heard that? But for me, it is in this group. All right. I'll see you.